Hey guys, it's Dread Dwells here. Thanks for coming back to my new video. Today, I'm going to be telling you some true Home Alone stories, told in my own special fashion. Thanks for coming. Stick around until the end. You'll never believe what happens. Just a few days ago, I experienced a horrifying incident that continues to haunt me. To provide some context, I reside on the second floor of a 3-level apartment building. Each unit is interconnected by a mysterious crawlspace, an unsettling feature that none of us in the apartment ever dared to explore. While we found solace in the knowledge that it remained unused, the events that unfolded shattered our illusion of safety. It was a twilight hour, with the sun casting long shadows across the city. As I walked through my living room, I caught sight of a figure on my fire escape. My blood ran cold as I realized it was a short woman peering into my windows. The mere sight of her sent chills down my spine. The unnerving part was that it wasn't yet completely dark, and she had still somehow managed to access the fire escape, as if drawn by an unknown force. She moved with an eerie purpose, fixating on each individual window, ignorant of my presence. My heart pounded in my chest as I instinctively crouched down, hidden from her gaze, praying she would notice me. Time seemed to stretch as I watched in terror. The woman persistently attempted to open the windows, her movements becoming more frenzied with each failed attempt. Panic overwhelmed me, knowing that my phone was out of reach in another room. I was trapped, defenseless, and paralyzed with fear. The minutes dragged on, each one feeling like an eternity, until she suddenly turned and vanished into the shadows of the disappearing day, leaving me in a state of utter unease. Summoning every ounce of courage I had, I rushed to my room to retrieve my phone, determined to seek help. But as I re-entered the living room, an icy shiver ran straight down my spine. A faint scratching sound, reminiscent of gnarled branches scraping against a window on a stormy night, emanated from the ceiling above. The ceiling, composed of decaying plaster and ancient wooden beams, seemed to groan in protest as the scratching intensified. It echoed through the apartment, its cadence hauntingly irregular, as if it were some otherworldly creature attempting to break free from its confinements. I looked up, my heart pounding in my ears, only to see a sliver of light piercing through a lifted slab in the dilapidated ceiling. 2 piercing eyes stared back at me, their intensity suffocating my thoughts. Dread consumed me as I realized the woman had gained access to the crawl space above my apartment. I fumbled for a weapon, finding solace in the grip of a nearby bat, ready to defend myself from whatever horror lay concealed above. As she crawled towards me, I poked the bat into the crawl space. She continued to try to move forward, but I pushed her back until she finally ran away. In a frantic state, I called the authorities, my voice trembling as it relayed the chilling events that had unfolded. Time stood still as I anxiously waited for their arrival, my eyes fixated on the sinister breach in the ceiling. Finally, the sounds of sirens shattered the silence and relief washed over me as the police flooded into my apartment. Their search yielded no sign of the intruder, leaving me unnerved and unsettled. Days later, news broke that the woman had been apprehended on a different fire escape. Her behavior aggressive, and her mind consumed by the grip of insidious substances. Though she was no longer a direct threat, the incident left an indelible mark on my psyche. I now reside in a constant state of unease, haunted by the thought she may return. The once familiar halls of my apartment building have transformed into a labyrinth of uncertainty, where darkness lurks behind every corner. I am left to wonder, with a shiver down my spine, if there are more sinister secrets concealed within the shadows, waiting to be unveiled. It happened not too long ago, an unnerving incident that continues to haunt me. It was a night like any other, as I prepared to wind down and retire for the evening. The soft glow of the television cast dancing shadows across my room, while my faithful dogs settled in after their final walk of the day. Little did I know, within the depths of that seemingly serene night, a sinister encounter awaited me. As I reached to turn off the TV and dim the lights, a low growl resonated from one of my dogs. Although he occasionally reacted this way when people passed by the house, his discerning nature made me take notice. Before I could ponder the peculiarity, the front door creaked open, releasing a chill that cut through the air. The sound of footsteps followed, heavy and deliberate, invading the sanctuary of my home. My dog's growl escalated into a furious bark, his protective instincts kicking into high gear. Sensing his urgency, my other dog, typically friendly toward all, bounded into the room with a mix of excitement and apprehension. The atmosphere grew thick with tension, as if the very walls held their breath in anticipation. In that split second, I reacted to the unsettling situation unfolding before me and blurted out, "What the hell? Who are you?" Standing in the hallway was a man in his mid to late 20s, tall and lean, the light of the hallway barely illuminating his face, making him look gaunt and almost unkempt. He appeared genuinely perplexed as he muttered, Oh wait, I think I might be in the wrong place." I mustered all the courage I had and firmly replied, "Yes, you are. Now get out." He immediately apologized and explained that he was coming to hang out with a friend, but had accidentally entered the wrong house. I inquired about the house he was looking for, and he mentioned a number that was only a couple digits off from mine. He apologized once more and swiftly left. Although he seemed harmless and apologetic, I couldn't shake the eerie feeling that lingered in the air. Relief washed over me, and I clung to the notion that this was nothing more than a simple mistake. But as morning dawned, casting a weak light upon the world outside, doubts began to gnaw at my resolve. I made my way to my neighbor's house, a couple in their mid-30s, who I didn't know too well, their warmth and familiarity nonetheless offering solace in this unsettling situation. As I relayed the events of the previous night, I expected confirmation, a shared laugh over the bizarre mix-up. To my astonishment, my neighbor's face contorted with confusion, a shadow of concern crossing their features. "I have no idea what you're talking about," they said, their voice tinged with unease. "We didn't have anyone over last night." The gravity of the situation settled upon me like a suffocating shroud. If the man who trespassed into my home wasn't connected to my neighbors, then who was he? What were his intentions? My mind became a labyrinth of dark possibilities, each corridor leading to a deeper abyss of fear. Days turned into sleepless nights as my imagination ran wild with disturbing scenarios. The man's face, shrouded in darkness, haunted my dreams. I began to question the safety of my home, the trust I had placed in the familiar streets and friendly faces in my neighborhood, now undermined by an unsettling presence lurking in the shadows. The incident served as a reminder, a whispered caution in the recesses of my mind. No longer could I take my safety for granted. No longer could I dismiss the sinister potential that lay hidden between the veneer of normalcy. From that day forward, I remained vigilant, my senses sharpened, forever haunted by the faceless intruder who invaded my sanctuary and shattered my sense of security. I resided in a terraced house, nestled amidst a cluster of interconnected homes, each with its own tiny patio. There's a small road, around 30 feet away from my yard, where people often take leisurely Sunday walks. In my crowded neighborhood, it's normal to witness the occasional passerby on the road. However, the sight of random individuals standing on my patio is anything but ordinary. When I was 9 years old, I used to return home from school about an hour before my mother arrived from work. My school was just a short distance away, about 55 yards, and my mom believed I was mature enough to handle being home alone for that short of a duration. On this particular day, I arrived home after school, Following my usual routine, I made sure to lock the front door, ensuring my safety, and then double-check the back door leading to the patio, seeking an extra sense of security. Despite it being the middle of the day, being alone still stirred a trace of fear within me. With the doors securely locked, I hurried upstairs to my room, determined to indulge in as much PlayStation time as possible before my mom returned and commanded me to start my homework. While engrossed in the virtual world of gaming, an unexpected noise disrupted the tranquility of my room. The sound emanated from outside my window, which offered a view of the road I had mentioned earlier. It resembled the faint meowing of a cat, but my feline companion had been missing for over 3 months. A glimmer of hope sparked within me, and the thought crossed my mind. Oh my god, did he finally come back? Filled with excitement, I rushed downstairs to check if the source of the sound was indeed my long-lost pet. However, the scene that unfolded before me would be forever etched in my memory, sending shivers down my spine, as I recall it now. Standing on my patio was a man, tall and imposing, with long black hair that partially obscured his eerie eyes. His disheveled appearance bore an uncanny resemblance to the female antagonist from a chilling horror film, reminiscent of a male version of the Ring's haunting figure. To my horror, he emitted high-pitched meowing sounds, akin to those of a distressed feline. To make matters even more disturbing, he was bent over, spitting out my father's crushed cigarette butts, which melted into a repulsive brown liquid pooling at his feet. He was feeding on the discarded remnants from the ashtray, as if driven by an insatiable hunger. I stood frozen in place, paralyzed by the grotesque sight unfolding before my young eyes. Eventually snapping out of my petrified state, I let out a piercing scream that must have reverberated throughout the neighborhood. Yet, the man on the patio remained unfazed, completely absorbed in his repulsive feast. Overwhelmed with fear, I sprinted back upstairs, locking the door to my room and immediately reaching for the phone. Trembling fingers dialed my mother's number, tears streaming down my face as I recounted the nightmarish scene that had unfolded before me. Right away, she contacted the police, and I clung to the thin thread of hope that their arrival would bring an end to the terror that was engulfing me. Cowering under my bedsheets, shivering with fear, I could still hear the unsettling, high-pitched noises emanating from the man devouring cigarette remnants on my patio. Time seemed to stretch on, endlessly, until the distant wails of sirens pierced the oppressive silence. Relief washed over me as the police arrived on the scene, their presence symbolizing safety and salvation. Through my bedroom window, I caught glimpses of 2 uniformed officers, their voices shrouded by the howling wind as they attempted to reason with the deranged man. One officer, his voice laced with authority, demanded to know, "What are you doing?" The tension escalated, reaching crescendo as the man suddenly lunged at the female officer, launching a ferocious attack that left her incapacitated on the ground. In that pivotal moment, the male officer, fueled by a mix of determination and desperation, swiftly drew his taser and unleashed electrical currents that coursed through the man's body. His eerie cries turned into anguished screams, reverberating throughout the night as the man writhed in agonizing torment. The officer fought to maintain control, grappling with the man's convulsive movements until he managed to secure him in handcuffs. As the chaos gradually subsided, the male officer approached my window, his wearied eyes meeting mine. He exhaled a heavy sigh, the weight of the events etched on his face. "I sure hope you didn't see all that," he murmured, his voice carrying a mix of exhaustion and concern. Overwhelmed by the gravity of the situation, tears welled up in my eyes, and I could only manage a nod in response. The commotion had drawn the attention of the neighbors, who gathered outside, their expressions a mix of curiosity and alarm. Among them was an elderly woman, her kind eyes filled with empathy. She took me under her wing, offering solace and comfort until my mother arrived home, her face filled with worry. As the police led the disturbed man away, a palpable unease lingered in the air. In the following days, the male officer returned to my house, seeking a conversation between my mother and me. With a somber expression, he shared a revelation that would shed light on those disturbing events. The man who had trespassed on my patio, he explained, was diagnosed with severe autism. He had escaped from a nearby facility that housed individuals with mental challenges, located around 3 miles from my home. Astonishingly, he had once lived in my house, but was forced to move when his mother, his sole caretaker, had passed away. The officer explained that the man, in a desperate search for his mother, had mistaken my home for the place he once knew. He yearned for the familiar routines and the comfort of living with his mother. However, his autism, compounded by years of physical tension, had made him extraordinarily strong, leading to the intense reaction he displayed when the police arrived. It was a revelation that instilled empathy within me. After a few sleepless nights, my life gradually returned to a semblance of normalcy. Time passed, and the man did not return. Years went by, and my parents eventually moved out of the house. Taking the opportunity, I purchased the house from them, and to this day, I continue to live there. Little did I know that the tranquility that I had grown accustomed to would be shattered 1 year ago. On an ordinary morning, as I savored my cup of coffee on the patio, my eyes were drawn to a figure staring by the fence along the road. It was a random passerby, but something about his presence struck a chord deep within me. Our eyes met, and a wave of dread washed over me. And then in that instant, I heard them. The haunting, high-pitched noises. My heart raced as the realization hit me. It was him, the man from years ago. Time had aged him, his once black hair, now tinged with gray, but the distinctive sounds confirmed his identity. Panic surged through my veins, as I understood that he had somehow managed to escape once again. The memories flooded back, reminding me of the anguish and the sorrow that consumed him. Fighting to maintain composure, I cautiously approached the fence and offered a hesitant nod of recognition. The man's response was immediate. He vaulted over the fence, effortlessly closing the distance between us. My mind raced, bracing for the worst, anticipating a repeat of the previous encounter. To my astonishment, his face broke into a wide, toothy grin. There was an innocence in his eyes, a flicker of recognition, as if he remembered me. In a surge of compassion, I extended an invitation for him to join me on the patio. He did not respond verbally, but his laughter filled the air. Together, we stepped into my house, and a transformation washed over him. A radiant joy, and a sense of coming home. The familiar surroundings evoked memories of his life with his mother, and it tugged at my heartstrings. I observed him silently as he settled onto the couch, his attention fixed on the cartoons playing on the television. In that moment, I chose not to disrupt his bliss, opting instead to let him savor a stolen glimpse of familiarity. However, I knew I couldn't keep this secret to myself. With a heavy heart, I contacted the facility that once held him captive. They arrived promptly, the caretakers tasked with guiding him back to the place he reluctantly called home. It wasn't easy. Tears streamed down his face, his heart-wrenching cries piercing the air as I coaxed him away from the only sense of belonging he had found in years. 2 days later, I reached out to the facility once more. We struck a deal. His name was Tom, and he had become more than just a stranger. Tom became my friend. Every Sunday, accompanied by his caretakers, Tom visits me, and together we watch cartoons. The highlight of his week. In these simple moments, I witness his childlike joy and find solace in the fact that, despite the darkness that once enveloped our lives, our connection was forged, transcending fear and misunderstanding. Now, as I reflect upon the journey that has brought us together, my thoughts have evolved. No longer are they consumed by the "let's not meet" guy on patio eating from the ashtray. Instead, they have transformed to a gentle affirmation. Let's meet every Sunday to watch cartoons, my friend Tom. And in that sentiment, a glimmer of hope shines through. A reminder that even amidst the most unsettling circumstances, compassion has the power to heal and restore.